So what is the best thing that the parents can do? Build the right team around themselves. When things go sideways, then you have the professionals that are guiding you and they're putting things back in order.
Parham, you have a lot of experience in your field and you have been doing this for over 2 decades. When I was doing my research, the topic that people were most interested when it comes to surrogacy and that whole field is how much does it cost?
You know, when you think about having a baby, you basically have sex and somebody becomes pregnant and there comes a child. There is a lot of intention behind what we have to do and to create a life. So in order to do that, you need medical, legal, emotional, and all the other logistical aspects that come into place to create that life. That's where the financial complexities come in because number one, you have to do an IVF. So you have to create embryos. For that, you need egg, you need sperm, you need to create the embryos. Then you need to make sure that whatever life is created out of that belongs to somebody, the person who intended to become the parent of that child that's created. So with that, when you're looking at medical, legal, a surrogate carrying the baby for you, or an egg donor being compensated for providing you with the eggs, these are a lot of costs. There are different financial components, whether you are in the US or whether you are in another country, and how everybody's compensated. So there's a lot of things that you have to consider. Is it going to be safe? Is it going to be legal? And is it going to be medically viable so that you have really professional ways of doing things? In the US, in general, when you come into the world of surrogacy, the magic number that everybody talks about is roughly about $200,000. What does that $200,000 get you? It gets you, God willing, a healthy baby. And what does that mean? You have to consider what the egg source is. You have to consider what the sperm source is. How do you create the embryos? Who is going to carry that pregnancy? How do we secure the legal components so that once the baby is born, the hospital has no question as to who is the parent to that child? Is there going to be adoption? Is it going to be just the names of the parents are going to be placed on the birth certificate right away? How do you navigate the legalities in different states, different countries? So, because everybody has different laws. So these are all really important components to think about when you think about the financial aspect of things.
Now, Parham, if it's so expensive and these families are going to have to pay so much money, how can they feel protected that some agency or lawyer or surrogate is not going to take their money and run?
That's a very, very important question and something that really our industry is grappling with now, because we want to make sure that everybody stays safe and secure. What I mentioned about the surrogates knowing exactly what they are signing up for. That's why it is extremely important for the parents, for the surrogate, for the agency to be working with reputable third-party escrow companies or attorney trust accounts that they really, really vet properly. We as agencies have our own favorites that we work with. So there are a couple in the industry that everybody knows and trusts. You want to make sure that there is a lot of transparency for the parents, so they know where their funds are going, how they're being spent. They get their own portal access so that 24/7 they can see where the funds are and how they are being dispersed to the surrogate, to the lawyers, to the doctors, to the agency, for insurance, for medical, whatever it's being spent. that they have transparency around it. Very, very important topic, and I think more and more discussions need to be had around that topic as well.
Now, another question I had was if they have to pay, you said that it's between $200,000 for the whole process. When intended parents have to pay that, can they finance some of it? Do they put a down payment and then are able to make payments? How does the payment structure works? Because most people don't have just 200 grand laying around to get started.
So typically, either intended parents they have savings, or they put money aside for this, or they get help from family members. There are some sources and resources for grants, not much. So it's not as if they will be able to find a source for $200,000. But there are financial institutions, for example, that might give you it kind of like a credit card. You know, they approve you for a certain amount, and you can get that money and put it towards your fertility journey, and you pay it just like you would pay a credit card. There are resources like that available, but for most parents, really it is having to come up with the funds either through family members, friends, their own resources, even getting a second mortgage on their home. I've seen all sorts of ways for parents. It really goes back to the urge and the investment that they're considering for themselves. People save money for many things. A vacation. They save money for going to a very expensive adventure, or whatever is important in their lives. This is one of the most important aspects of anybody's life. So they usually find a way to find that money that they need in order to invest in their future with a child. And the surrogate is secure. So she needs to know that whatever she's going to be compensated is secured in an account, and she will get paid. So you're not waiting. So for what if the parents can't pay it then? Because it becomes an issue. So you got to make sure the money is there somewhere secure.
But they could start with an amount and then add a bit more and a bit more, or before everything gets in motion, they need to have the bulk of the money already in escrow.
So the bulk of the money must be secured once the surrogate and the intended parents sign the contract that spells out what all of the financial obligations are. Those funds must be secured in a trust account or an escrow account. So that's when the bulk of the funds will be placed. However, those funds belong to the parents, and they are spent according to the contract that they have with the surrogate. If at some point the contract ends and the surrogate, for example, doesn't become pregnant, and the parents decide, we don't want to continue anymore, or they don't have any more embryos, escrow will return all of the funds that are sitting there to the parents. So it's not as if the money is in there and it's spent and gone and nobody gets anything for it. So there's a lot of checks and balances around the funds.
Is this a segment of the industry that you see that has a lot of abuse from big corporations, big companies, big insurance funds, or big hospitals that are trying to jack up the price or like close some of the segments of the process so they can take an advantage?
Not in that way, but what we see happening a lot now is there is a lot of venture capital money and tech fund money that's now being focused in the world of third-party reproduction and fertility. So we see that a lot of agencies, clinics, IVF labs being bought out or consolidated through VC funds and bigger companies, usually to the detriment of everybody. Our world in third-party reproduction, we're dealing with a lot of emotion. It's high-touch emotional matters and issues. It's not about money and dollars. Unfortunately, when the big companies come in and they want to invest, for example, in fertility clinics or in agencies, they're thinking of how much money we can make. Whereas what we are dealing with is a lot of emotional baggage that come with everything that we're doing for the intended parents, for the surrogate. You're dealing, first of all, with women that are on a lot of hormones. So that comes with a lot of emotions. You also are dealing with people that have been through a lot of fertility challenges and they're looking for solutions. So I'll just give you an example. One of my favorite clinics that I loved working with, from the moment the parents went in there, they would first meet with the doctor and they would sit in front of the doctor. And the doctor would look in their eyes and say, "Don't worry, I got this. I'm here to help you." They would come sit with us. I look them in the eyes and I say, "Don't worry, I got this. We're here to help you." They would sit with the surrogate. She would tell them the same thing. Now, unfortunately, what I see more and more happening in the clinics is when the parents come in, the first thing they are asked to do, they're directed into the finance office. So first you got to go in, then you got to pay whatever you need to pay, and then you go meet with the doctor. It has changed the whole dynamic of the emotional aspect that this really is. It's changed that the emotional aspect for the parents where they're not feeling that support that they need. The first thing they're asked to do is pay. And really and that takes away from their emotions.
What is the duration of that process? And when a couple is thinking about the financial cost of this whole thing or like the investment that they're going to put in, how is that compartmentalized? Because I would imagine that it's not you come with a check for this amount and then you get the baby. How is that happening?
Sure. So I'll break it up into really who is an intended parent. So we have to look at that first and then work it backwards on timing and everything. Intended parents who ultimately decide to have a child, they're either a married couple who are going through infertility. So they get to a point where they're sitting in front of a doctor that tells them, in order to have a child, you will need an egg donor or you will need a surrogate in order to have that child, or you need a sperm donor. Then you have another set who are same-sex couples that by definition, for example, two men who decide to have a child together, by definition, they can't do it alone, so they need an egg donor and they need someone to carry the pregnancy for them. You also have single men, single women who decide to have children. So for each of these individuals, these sets, it's different milestones where they have to go through. So for example, for married heterosexual couples, usually they come into this world through challenges with infertility. So they might have already spent a lot of time, effort, energy, financial resources, and have failure after failure. And now they are at a point where they have mourned their own fertility, and now they realize that they need someone's help.
What percentage is heterosexual couples that have infertility issues, and what percentage is the other different variations that you just mentioned?
Traditionally, I've been doing this for 25 years, a long time, so a lot has changed in this world of surrogacy and assisted reproduction, which is using a donor source and also possibly someone carrying a baby for you. Globally, 1 in 6 women face infertility. I believe in the United States, it's around 1 in 8 that have challenges conceiving themselves, and that's a staggering number. That's a lot of women who need someone's help in order to have a child. With the new laws around same-sex marriages and reunions, so you add a staggering number to that of individuals who otherwise could not have a child. So if they do want to have a child, they definitely need to go through this process. And as more individuals decide that, yes, they do want to get married, they do want to have a child, or even being single, the urge of parenthood becomes stronger in our society, then the numbers grow of people that really need this process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting that you mentioned that, because the laws at different states are changing, and here in America we are very open now two people of same sex getting married. To me personally, I think that if two people come to that point in their relationship and that's what they want to do, I think those people are probably going to end up being way better parents, even if they're same sex, because they're intentional about it, than, so a couple that didn't even want it or planned it or was interested in doing it or was ready. So I know it's a very tricky mix of like emotions with religion, with beliefs. So I, I don't think I want us to go down that path. I believe that people should be free to like try what they want to do with their families. And I personally am happy if same-sex couples want to have kids. I think that's a plus for the world. Like those are people who are interested in forming a family and bringing a child, and they're going to do their best to make it happen. Especially if they go through that process, you know that they really care about that child and they really mean it. Now, let's talk about the specifics of how does this work in the science. And I don't want us to go too deep, but for the person that is interested in this, how does it work, Doc?
So when you come into this world of surrogacy, third-party reproduction, as I mentioned, you need a few things. You need an egg source, you need a sperm source, you need to have the ability to create the embryos from the egg and sperm, which is through a process called IVF, in vitro fertilization. So they basically, an embryologist takes the eggs, takes the sperm, mixes them, creates the embryo.
Then once that embryo is ready, is this like microscopic size? Is it like,
Oh,
is it on a petri dish?
exactly. Yes, very, very, very small. You can't see it with the eye. So it has to be created in a petri dish, and they will inseminate it into the uterus. So it's through in vitro fertilization. So they create the embryo outside of the body, and then they inseminate it into the uterus.
Is that a painful procedure for the woman that is being fertilized?
It's not painful. It's I mean obviously it's invasive. That means that they're inseminating something inside the uterus. It for most women, they describe it as the same feelings that they have when they have a pap smear. It's some pressure, usually not pain, no pain at all, but some pressure. Some women experience cramping, kind of like period like cramping afterwards, but it usually goes away within a few hours.
Now, when a woman wants to do that, she also has to go through a rigorous process of testing. And how does that work?
There is a lot that goes into picking someone who is actually going to become a surrogate. So in order to be a surrogate, there are very strict guidelines that we follow. And there is so much that we do in order to screen properly as a surrogate. So there have to be emotionally, financially, legally, family-wise support. Everything has to kind of align for them. Medically, these are all very important. So on our end, for example, we do very strict vetting, from criminal background checks, home visits, psychological screening, physical checkups of the surrogates, to make sure that they're physically able to carry a pregnancy. So we check their thyroid, they do their pap smear, they do all their blood work. So these are all very important. But going beyond the medical requirements, very important are also emotional requirements. So we have to make sure that they're in the right mindset. They know exactly what they are doing here. They're going to be carrying a child for someone else, and then they're going to be handing that child to that person or couple.
Yeah, that sounds very, very difficult. How are you guys able to prepare someone for that? Like, how can you tell that, okay, this person is going to be able to deal with that separation? Because even for moms that are having their own child, I know of postpartum depression, when that whole phase is over and now their bodies is changing. it has to be very dramatic for that person, even if they know at the set that they're not going to keep the child. How do you guide them through that process?
In my experience, I think maybe not even 1% of women on earth would have the ability, the emotional ability, and the heart, the willingness. They are an extremely unique human beings.
Why do you think they agree to do it?
Over and over again, what I hear from the surrogates is, first of all, they've had some sort of a brush with fertility somehow in their own lives, in their own circles. They've seen either family members, friends suffer through infertility and not being able to have a child. And the first thing that they usually say is, look, I've had an easy pregnancy and I enjoyed being pregnant. Maybe I don't want to raise the child anymore, but the fact that I can give this miracle and this gift to someone else, it's amazing. And for them, it's very satisfying to know that they've given this to someone else. This is the most important thing,
Yeah.
that they really feel that. Financial aspect of it is also important, but it's never the most important thing. If what the surrogate is being compensated somehow helps them in their lives, if it allows them to buy a home or to save for education or for their kids' futures, amazing. It really is a positive and it serves a purpose. But I guarantee you, if a woman comes into this with only the financial aspects of it in mind, they will not become a surrogate, because once they find out what they have to do in order to become a surrogate, and then all of the shots they have to take, all of the commitment that it takes to continue to become pregnant, it's not easy. They won't do it.
They have to have had a previous pregnancy and a successful delivery before they can be considered to be a surrogate. Is that correct?
And one step more, they must have had their own child and they must be raising or have raised their own child. And those are for emotional, medical, and legal reasons. So they must have had their own child and they must be raising their own child. Surrogacy, when it started, it was actually more traditional surrogacy. So the surrogate also provided the egg source for the pregnancy. So the surrogate was literally the mother. So it was her egg, and she was carrying the pregnancy for someone, either a single man or a married couple, or, nowadays, traditional surrogacy is very, very uncommon. So now, 90% of surrogacies are gestational surrogacy, which means the egg source is not the same as the surrogate. So we're either using the eggs from an egg donor or from the intended parent.
Why do you think that shift happened?
Because of the legal, emotional aspects of it, that the surrogate is not the mother of the baby that's being born. It's a gestational carrier for the baby.
I'm curious to understand, how does the whole process works, and especially for a couple, why should they go and find someone like yourself to help them through that process, instead of just trying themselves to find someone that would agree to do this or do that?
When you come into this world, there are so many moving parts. The parents, the doctor, the clinic that's doing the in vitro fertilization, the surrogate, the lawyers, the psychologists, the insurances, the court system, the OBGYN that ultimately will deliver the baby, the hospital where the surrogate will deliver. So there are so many moving parts. And of course, very, very important among all of these is making sure that the emotional, legal guidelines are really followed and they are in place. Intended parents are not held hostage to financial demands of someone who potentially wants to be a surrogate, but then has unreasonable demands of the parents. Making sure the surrogate is safe financially, legally, and that she is 100% protected through the entire process. This is what the role of the agency is, to make sure, more important than anything else, that the surrogate is safe, the intended parents are safe, and ultimately the baby that will be born is safe. So that's the role of the agency.
I see. Do you guys go out and find the surrogates, or do they come to you? And in the case of the parents, do they come to you directly, or do they come through a doctor, or how does that work? Like, how do people find about you guys?
Couples that have fertility challenges, they usually hear about this process and what they need to do through a fertility specialist. So they're sitting in front of a doctor, and the doctor tells them, you need a surrogate. And for that, I suggest that you speak to so-and-so agency. They can help you find a surrogate. With ChatGPT and AI and research online, a lot of parents and even surrogates that want to become surrogates, they're doing a lot of research online themselves, and they find resources that can help them and guide them through the process and ultimately land with an agency.
I would assume that with all of those moving parts, the legal aspects of it all, you have mentioned it multiple times. So walk me through a little bit of the legal landscape. Who brings the lawyer? Is it like lawyer from this side and this side? How does that work?
You definitely want to make sure that the intended parents are represented by a third-party reproductive law specialist that knows the laws of the state where the surrogate lives. So the most important thing here is the laws of the state where the surrogate lives rather than where the intended parents live. So technically, the parents can be from anywhere in the world. What matters is where the surrogate lives, and we want to make sure that the surrogate lives in a surrogate-friendly state. So, for example, California and many neighboring states have favorable laws for the intended parents and the surrogate, where we are able to get a pre-birth judgment that instructs the hospital to place the parent's name on the birth certificate from the moment the baby is born. So the legal aspect of it, logistically, there are two components to the legal. One is almost a 65-page contract that the intended parents and the surrogate will sign and notarize that will really spell out all of the rights, obligations, legalities of the intention behind creating this life. So it puts together all of the, first of all, the laws of that state that require to be in place, that are required to be in place, and also the other logistical matter. What ifs? What if there is a pregnancy? What if there is no pregnancy? What if there is a miscarriage? What happens if the surrogate goes on bed rest? What happens if there is complications along the way? How does the surrogate get compensated? At what points does she get compensated? And for what does she get compensated? These are all covered in that contract. So that's step number one.
Okay.
And then step number two during the pregnancy is to petition the courts to let them know that the surrogate is pregnant, and the purpose for this pregnancy is to make X and Y the parents. So their name needs to go on the birth certificate, getting an order signed by a judge that will instruct the hospital where the surrogate delivers to place the parents' names on the birth certificate. So that's the two components of the legal.
Do you ever see a lot of issues with things going kind of sideways and then lawyers have to be involved? And because I think looking from the outside or like getting started in this process and researching, it sounds daunting. It sounds like a lot of things could go wrong from a legal perspective.
It's funny, every time I meet with parents, tell them the same thing. I guarantee you one thing, things always go sideways. Things always happen because we're all human beings. This is life. Life happens. Anything could happen at any time during a pregnancy, and people's family members die. A lot of things go sideways. So what is the best thing that the parents can do? Build the right team around themselves. When they have the best doctor, the best lawyers, the best agency, the best surrogate, when they really stack themselves with the right team, when things go sideways, then you have the professionals that are guiding you, and they're putting things back in order where they should be. So this is really important because you can't avoid sideways, but you can have the right team that can help you really put things in order again.
Why do you think people go through such lengths to have children?
The urge to have a child is very strong. And I see it over and over, especially with mostly throughout the years, I'll give you an example. You see a lot of women, I have seen a lot of women who maybe put their career first, or they never thought about the fact that, they think there is no biological clock, and that they can have a child whenever they have the intention to have a child then. The problem is most of the women who reach the age of around 40 start having fertility challenges. When a woman wraps her head around wanting to have a child, it becomes an obsession. And at that point, really the urge to become a parent, to have a child, takes over their lives. And thank God that we live in this day and age where they do have options. So they can get an egg donor, they can have a surrogate, and in order to have a child. I really, really believe anyone who wants to be a parent must have the opportunity to become a parent. That's the most important thing. And we're blessed to live in this day and age where you can make that happen.
For me, having kids is one of the best things that has ever happened to me. And when I had my son, I was 24. I was still in college. It was very challenging. It was very difficult. But it was way easier than all the cases that you see all the time when people have to go through all of this hoops to be able to be a dad. In your case, I know you have kids too. Tell me about that experience, and now your kids are all grown up, and how does it feel to be a father now in your stage of life?
It is the biggest blessing, I think, for any human being to have, to be a parent. You had the blessing and the benefit of a surprise. So for example, one day you found out, hey, I'm going to be a dad. And it was a surprise and it was amazing. A lot of people don't have that option. So for them, it's really an intention behind it. It's a yearning, it's a longing, but there is an intention. I want to be a parent. And in order to make that happen, I have to do something about it. I have to take these steps. I have to decide whether I want to use an egg donor, I want to use a surrogate or a sperm donor, and I need to see a doctor, and I need to find lawyers, and I need to find an agency. There's a lot of intention behind it. What you said was very important, that the ones who come to parenthood with intention, do they make better parents? I really think they do. It doesn't mean that everybody who became a parent accidentally or through natural ways is not going to be a good parent, but the intention is very important, I think.
How does it feel now for you that you're going to become a grandparent? Tell me about that.
Oh, I don't even know how to describe it, because I don't know how much of it I'm romanticizing in my head before it happens. And so for me, I'm already falling in love over and over and over again. For one of my son's bar mitzvahs, I had written that really having a child, becoming married and then having children, it's really falling in love over and over again. You fall in love with your spouse, and then you fall in love again with your child, and then another child, and then now a grandchild. So really, it's just falling in love over and over again.
Well, Parham, thank you so much for sharing some time with us and for walking us through the amazing work that you do. Thank you so much in behalf of all the families that you help. And hopefully you get to help more people in the future, and you bring more babies into the world.
That is the goal. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.